Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll try this again. We can get started now, and I want to introduce Plan Commission members here and everybody come here at the table. I'm Ron Garrett, the Director of Community Development. And to my right is my assistant, Tabitha Hurd. This is Ms. Ruth Nash. She's the Chair of the Planning Commission. Next to her is Ms. Betty Davis. She's Vice Chair of the Planning Commission. And next to her is Ms. Susan Cato. And then we got Dan Chapman on the end. And of course, I think everybody knows Mr. Theron Gates, our county administrator. So we'll get right to this. We've got 3 other zoning cases here tonight, other than the Rock Quarry, but those 3 are not going to take long at all. And we'll get started with those. Yeah, we'll. Okay. We'll start the meeting now. I'll turn it over to Chair Lady Nash.
Okay, I will call the meeting to order, and we usually do not read the minutes because everybody has a copy, and we have a copy that if anybody would like to see them from the last meeting. But I would like to ask for approval of the minutes. All in favor? Motion carries. And I'll turn the meeting to Ron.
Okay, the first case we tonight is number 12. How about that? Okay. Okay, our first case tonight will be case number 12, and this is a rezone application come from Mr. Buddy L. Crooks. He is an agent for Lang Cloud Porter, and Mr. Crooks is requesting approval to rezone a .25 acre lot from rural residential to commercial for the purpose of opening a general store in an existing commercial building. The building was built in 1960 and was used as a country store for many years. The building has been vacant for several years, and now Mr. Buddy Crooks and his wife want to restart a small general store business in the Durham community. The property is located on Silver Street in Durham. The county health department has approved a septic tank system for the business. The Durham community is designated as a crossroad community in the comprehensive plan and on the character area maps. This is the type of land use and activity that is recommended in the comprehensive plan for this character area. And reviewing everything in this application, it's my recommendation that this rezoning case be approved. Is anybody out there want to speak to this case? Okay. All right.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion we approve the zoning request.
All in favor? Motion carries.
Okay, the County Planning Commission is recommending that this rezone application be approved. They, of course, can only recommend to the county commissioners. They can't make the final decision. That will move on to the county commission meeting on October 23rd, 6 o'clock p.m. It'll be in the same location that we're in tonight. Our next case for consideration is case number 13. This rezone application comes from Ms. Lillian Dunn Hightower, along with her sister, May Edna Dunn Bonds. They are requesting approval to rezone 4 acres of their 60 acres from A1 to RD. The property is located at 2131 J.W. Dunn Road. The reason for the rezoning request is to sell 56 acres of their air property and keep 4 acres and an existing vacant house, which is their home place. This zoning request will not adversely affect any of the surrounding property and is consistent with the county comprehensive plan and character area map. This is out in the rural area, zoned agriculture, but because they want to sell all but 4 acres, they are required to have a rezone approved for the 4-acre tract. And it is my recommendation that the rezone request be approved. Is anybody to speak to this? Lillian Dunn, Hightower request?
Yes.
Okay, come up to the podium, please, state your name and address. There's a sign-up sheet there for you to sign up on. It should be listed under Lillian Hightower.
I'm Lillian Dunn Hightower, and, well, I've been informed that we can't sell the 56 because, since we're under conservation, that we have to keep 12 acres.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're selling the 48 acres, we would like to, and we want it rezoned.
Okay, so, I think my office called you a couple of times and we advised y'all the conservation use. So now, it sounds like you want to request a rezoning, now to be from A1 to RR, which is the minimum 10 acres. So if you're requesting a rezoning for 12 acres, then we can do that. Is that what you want to do?
Yes, yes, that's what I want to do, and, I understand that the person that buying has to come down and sign for a rezoning of their own, if they want to keep the conservation.
Yes, if somebody, you're talking about somebody buying the balance of your land,
Right.
yeah, they don't have to come in and sign up for conservation. They don't have to do any rezoning, but they do have to sign up for conservation.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
Well,
Who makes a motion that, we approve it if they take out the 12 acres? Is there a second? All in favor? Motion carried.
Okay, now we're gonna skip over case 14. We're gonna go into case number 15 now. Michael Dover is requesting approval to rezone 2 acres of his 6 acres from LDR to RD. The property located at the dead end of Red Lane, which is off of Mount Carmel Road. The property west of and adjacent to the subject property is owned by the Georgia DNR Wildlife Reserve. The reason for the rezoning request is to deed 2 acres to his father to build a single-family residence for his father's use. There are 4 families that live on this dead-end road. The only traffic on Red Lane comes from the current residents and occasional vehicle traffic from Georgia DNR vehicles going back and forth from the Wildlife Reserve. There will not be any adverse effects on surrounding properties, and the request is consistent with the county comprehensive plan and character area map. And he has a dollar that owns 6 acres, be north of his 2 acres. And so my recommendation that the rezoning request be approved.
Is there anybody to speak? Do I have a motion to approve? Motion to approve, is there a second? Susan, second. All in favor? Motion carried.
Okay, now we come to case number 14, but before we start that, I forgot to recognize one of the other people who helped on this, on our zoning, Ms. Annie Sowers. She's an intern with the county, been working with the county for several months, and she assisted in these rezoning application review, reading. I don't want to leave her out. And now we come to case 14. This is a very complex case. I'm going to read my recommendation. Recommendation only comes from me and planning staff. And Mr. Aaron Gay, our county administrator, is part of that staff, along with Annie Sowers. Case number 14. The Meriwether County Planning and Zoning Department has received a request for rezoning and special use permit on 775 more or less acre tract owned by Luella H. Randall, L.I., trustees of Luther Randall Jr. Trust. The property is located along State Route 85 and State Route 362 in the Alvin community, tax map number 164-06. The property is vacant and is currently zoned low-density residential. The request from the applicant is to rezone the 775 acres from low-density residential to industrial and request a special use permit to allow the development and operation of a granite quarry. The application provides a summary as well as more detailed information on the proposed project. The application also provides information on granite resources, proposed material shipment methods, conceptual site plan, rail spurs, economic benefits, permit requirements, air quality, water quality, noise, blasting, and transportation impacts, and offers opinions on impacts to the surrounding property. A copy of the summary and conceptual site plans provided and the complete application is available for review. I have a copy of the application up here on the table if anybody wants to look through it. And over here to my right, the big chart is the recently adopted character area map for future development in Meriwether County. My recommendation on this zoning request is based on an extensive review of the application and information provided, as well as research conducted by county staff. Consideration of the following standards for the exercise of zoning power as found in the Meriwether County Zoning Ordinance, Annex A, Article 16, Section 16.8 is as follows. The first standard to govern the zone decision by is the existing land uses and zoning classification of nearby property. The zoning classification of nearby properties is low-density residential, and the uses include small farms, single-family residences, pasture land, small community convenience store, churches, county fire station, and land used to grow timber. All these uses are compatible with the current zoning classification in the area. Timber is a major industry in Meriwether County and is also compatible with current zoning. The subject property is currently zoned low-density residential. It was acquired by Randall family prior to 1985 and has been used in the past for timberland. The next criteria, the suitability of the subject property for the zone purposes. The subject property is currently zoned low-density residential and is used as timberland. The property has remained undeveloped and used as timberland since acquired by Luther H. Randall Jr. prior to 1985. Timber production is a major industry in Meriwether County, and the current zone allows a continuation of the subject property's current use as well as other options permitted under low-density residential. The next criteria, the extent that the property values of the subject property are diminished by the particular zoning restrictions. The potential property value of the subject property could be diminished by low-density residential zoning, as grant mined from the subject property could possibly make the property more valuable for the property owner. However, in review of the information provided in the application, additional studies and a more in-depth analysis would need to be performed to accurately determine the granted resources. From the information provided, only 4 test bores were performed on the 775-acre tract. 4 core samples from a 775 acre tract may be insufficient to develop an accurate analysis of the grant resources. The property has been under ownership of the same family since prior to 1985 and has been undeveloped and used as timberland with a low-density residential zoning, and under its current zoning, the land value has appreciated significantly during that time. The next criteria. The extent that the destruction of property values of the subject property promotes the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the public. The destruction of property value has not been proven due to the limited scope of the testing of granted reserves. Opinions have been provided by the applicant that the proposed use of the subject property will not create significant adverse impacts to other properties and land uses in the vicinity. But again, the information and opinions provided in the application do not provide sufficient information to make that a statement of fact. What is fact is the subject property has maintained a viable use for at least 30 years as timberland and continued as timberland or other allowable uses under low-density residential zoning will maintain a positive impact on the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the public. The next criteria, the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed upon the individual property owner. Diminished values or hardship imposed on the individual property owner have not been proven as previously stated. The financial gain to the public and the county have been overstated in the application, as evidenced in the estimation of property taxes provided. The information provided lists a millage rate of 47 mills, when the current rate is less than 36 mills, which includes the Board of Education and the county. The additional 11 mills inflates the revenue estimate by 30%. There is no information provided that supports the $1.5 to $3 million worth of real estate improvements starting in 2019. These numbers are substantially more than real estate improvements at some other quarry operations. The estimated $3 million plus personal property tax value is not broken down into machinery, equipment, furniture, and fixtures, and inventory. This prevents an accurate review of the numbers, as materials and inventory shipped out of state will qualify for 100% Freeport exemption. Freeport exemption reduces taxable inventory numbers by up to 95% in some locations. The application states that 70% of the material will be transported by rail, but doesn't state the percentage that will remain in Georgia. Additional information on the project on the projected sales tax also noted for a thorough analysis is needed for a thorough analysis. Sales tax is due at the point of delivery, so only material sold and delivered to Meriwether County will be subject to Meriwether County sales tax. The projected 100,000 tons in 2019 would equate to 6,667 truckloads at 15 tons per load of gravel sold and delivered to Meriwether County per year. Sales to local and state governments would be tax exempt. The next criteria. Whether the subject property has a reasonable economic use as currently zoned. The property has been under the same family ownership and substantially the same use since before 1985, which indicates a reasonable economic use as currently zoned. The information contained in the application states that the property likely could continue to be used for timber production and recreational hunting, and could potentially be developed over time into some low-density residential subdivision. The next criteria. The length of time the subject property has been vacant as zoned considered in the context of land development in the area and vicinity of the property. The subject property has been vacant for a substantial period of time and has been used as timberland under the current low-density residential zoning. The long-term use and zoning of this property is consistent with zoning and use of other properties in the area. Surrounding property uses include farms, timberland, and residential uses on large lots, all under low-density residential zoning. The next criteria, whether the proposed zoning will be a use that is suitable in view of the use and development of adjacent and nearby property. The proposed zoning and planned use is not suitable in view of the use of the development of adjacent and nearby properties. Development in the area consists of farmland, timberland, and residential uses. The introduction of an intense or heavy industrial zoning and forest facility into this area would be unsuitable regardless of the attempts to safeguard the adjoining land uses. The proposed 100-foot natural buffer and 100-foot berm do not represent an extensive buffer considering the surrounding use and will not mitigate all impacts of an intense industrial use in a rural residential area. The next criteria, whether the proposed zoning will adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby property. The proposed zoning and use will adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent and nearby property. The introduction of a quarry operation into this area will increase noise through the use of mining equipment, rock crushers, loading of trucks, rail cars, and blasting. Gravel trucks entering and exiting the quarry will increase traffic in the area. The quarry trip generation chart in the application appears to indicate that 24 trucks will enter, then exit the quarry over a 24-hour period. With the proposed 300,000 tons to be hauled by truck, that equates to approximately 64 trips per day to meet the proposed reduction, not 24 trips. The properties and the residents in the area are dependent on wells as a sole source of water. Loss of water capacity or water quality would have a tremendous impact on use and usability of surrounding properties, significantly impacting property values and way of life. While the applicant indicates it is our opinion that there will be no adverse groundwater effects, there is no guarantee or simple solution if wells are impacted. The next criteria, whether the zoning proposal will result in a use which will or could cause an excessive or burdensome use of existing streets, transportation facilities, utilities, or schools. The proposed use would not cause issues in terms of use of utilities or schools, but could create an excessive and burdensome use on streets and transportation facilities unless major improvements are made to intersections and points of entry to operation. The use of county roadways, which are not designed for excessive weight limits, would have to be limited to local delivery only. And criteria, the next criteria, whether the zoning proposal is in conformity with the policies and intent of the land use plan. This zoning request is not in conformity with the policies and intent of the land use plan or character area map, which were adopted in June of 2018 and approved by the Georgia Department of Community Affairs in July of 2018. The plan, which will guide development and growth in Meriwether County for the years 2018 through 2038, was developed with input and participation of citizens from Meriwether County through numerous public hearings and surveys. The approved document calls for an extensive area of the county, including the location of the proposed rock quarry, to be rural development and small crossroad communities. There are areas identified in the plan that are designated for future development as industrial and commercial, but not at these proposed locations. The Community Goals Vision Statement states in part, Meriwether County, in cooperation and partnership with its municipalities, will strive to enhance the quality of life of its citizens and preserve community assets, including its rural character, small town sense of place, cultural and natural resources, and scenic beauty. The comprehensive plan includes designated character areas as shown on the character map, which is an integral part of the plan. The rural development character area is defined by agriculture, forestry, estate residential, and single-family residence on large acre lots. Low-density development and conservation subdivision are encouraged to preserve the rural character of the landscape. The preservation of the scenic and rural landscape is a priority in this area. Recommended land uses for this area are agriculture, equestrian, estate residential lots, and single-family conservation subdivisions, master plan communities, small-scale commercial use providing neighborhood goods and services, and passive recreational parks. The implementation strategies for this character area are promote new development to be large lot or state style, having a minimum of 2 acres or greater. Promote agritourism and related uses as equestrian centers, boarding stables, riding academies, and nature preserves. Preserve and maintain the scenic, rural character of the area. Encourage the preservation of active farming activities such as crop cultivation, grazing, timber, and equestrian uses. Develop and promote best practices for timber reforestation to minimize negative visual impacts along roadways. Preserve the natural, cultural, and historic resources. The character area map includes crossroad communities. This character area in Alton is identified by very small commercial areas that have been or will be developed to serve the needs of historic crossroads in the rural areas of the county. Mostly limited to convenience stores and services such as small grocery stores, personal service establishments, convenience stores, and gas stations as intended uses to occupy this area. Recommended land uses in this character area are small-scale commercial, local institutions such as churches, schools, fire stations, and green space. The implementation strategy is to preserve the rural character and landmarks of the community by providing small-scale commercial options. The Alton community, which is in the periphery of the proposed rock quarry, is designated as a crossroad community in the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan and the associated character map has an industrial character area that is intended to feature and promote designated industrial areas. These are activity centers which include various industrial manufacturing, warehousing, distribution, and large-scale commercial land uses. These areas serve as employment hubs for residents of Marietta County and surrounding municipalities. Expanded infrastructure to appropriate areas adjacent to these existing sites are a priority. Proper access and connection to and from primary roadways is encouraged. The recommended land uses are heavy and light industrial distribution, warehousing, and research and development. The implementation strategies are to seek suitable large manufacturing operations, promote industrial parks as part of the key economic development cluster, and encourage the use of existing industrial sites versus developing new sites. The next criteria, whether there are other existing or changing conditions affecting the use and development of the property, which gives supporting grounds for either approval or disapproval of the zoning proposal. The existing uses and conditions of the property surrounding the proposed rock quarry are not changing. There are scattered single-family residences, timberland, and farms around the subject property that remain unchanged since the establishment of Marietta County. The proposed rock quarry has some positive, however, when it's project weighed against the recently adopted comprehensive plan and future character area map. It is staff's opinion that the zoning proposal is not consistent with the comprehensive plan and therefore is not consistent with public health, safety, and welfare. If the industrial rezoning request is granted, there is a special use permit that must be approved to allow development of the quarry. In order to grant the special use permit, there must be a finding that the following standards have been met. These are found in our zone ordinance, Appendix A, zone ordinance, Article 16, Section 16.22-4. 16.22-4A reads, the available existing street system is adequate to efficiently and safely accommodate traffic that will be generated by the proposed use or development. While the preliminary review and projected traffic volumes indicate the state transportation system will be adequate, the increased truck traffic will impact the functionality of the street system without improvements to intersections and entry points to the quarry. County roads will be prohibited from truck use except for local delivery. The existing public utilities, facilities, and services are adequate to accommodate the proposed use or development. The existing power utilities will need to be upgraded in order to accommodate the proposed use or development. The use or development will not generate or cause conditions such as noise, light, glare, and an odor or similar objectionable features, which could reduce the value of use or enjoyment of surrounding property. The proposed zoning and use will generate noise through blasting, equipment associated with quarry operation, material loading, and trucks and rail cars, hauling material. There will also be dust associated with the operation that will have to be managed to prevent air quality concerns. The use will not have a detrimental environmental impact on the surrounding area. The proposed use would have a detrimental environmental impact on the surrounding area by disrupting the peace and tranquility of the rural environment that is currently enjoyed by residents in the vicinity of the proposed development. Also, there is a high probability that the subject area contains unrecorded archaeological and historical sites. A Phase 1A cultural resource assessment was not provided in the application for staff review. The last criteria for special use consideration. The use will not adversely affect the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. The use would adversely affect the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community because the area is designated as rural development in the Georgia Department of Community Affairs and approved the 2018 through 2038 Meriwether County Comprehensive Plan and Character Area Map as developed by the county citizens to guide the future growth of Meriwether County. Okay, recommendations of rezoning request for case number 14. After extensive review of the application and zoning criteria, my recommendation is for denial of the requested rezoning and special use permit. Reasons for the recommendation include, but are not limited to, the following. The application as submitted is not consistent with the Meriwether County Comprehensive Plan approved earlier this year. The application as submitted is not consistent with the Meriwether County Character Area Map. Review of the standards for the exercise of zoning powers does not support the requested rezoning and use at the location. The proposed rezoning and use is not consistent with other properties in the surrounding area. The second property has a viable use based upon the current zoning and historical use of the property. The proposed use will generate additional traffic, noise, blasting, dust, and other operational processes that not consistent with surrounding property or the low-density residential zone. Should the Planning Commission and or the Meriwether County Board of Commissioners choose to approve this request, county staff recommends that the applicant meet the following conditions. And these will be zoning conditions that will be required if the zoning proposal is approved. All vehicles, equipment, machinery, furniture, fixtures, and inventory at this location shall be returned for taxes in Meriwether County. The business shall be based in Meriwether County, and the owner-operator must obtain a business license prior to the start of operations. Operation hours of the quarry shall not begin before 7 a.m. or extend after 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday. Quarry shall not operate on Sundays and or recognize Meriwether County holidays. Blasting in conjunction with the quarry operation shall be limited to twice per month, Monday through Friday, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. No blasting shall occur on any Meriwether County recognized holiday that falls during the week. Owner-operator shall establish planned dates and times for blasting and provide an advanced copy of the Meriwether County Planning and Zoning Department and notice to the general public by signage, electronic media, and any other reasonable measures. In all blasting operations, the maximum particle velocity of any component of ground motion recorded on a 3-component seismograph may not exceed 0.8 inches per second at the property line. Instrumentation utilized for measuring particle velocity shall meet the current standards of the Georgia Blasting Standards Act and the U.S. Bureau of Mines requirements. Operation of quarries shall be in strict compliance with all rules and regulations of the Georgia Environmental Protection Division governing quarry operations and the Georgia Surface Mining Act. A 500-foot undisturbed natural buffer shall be maintained around the entire perimeter of the property included in the rezoning. This buffer requirement shall also be maintained along all state and county road right-of-way. Owner-operator shall construct a minimum 100-foot planted berm along the perimeter of the 500-foot buffer zone. Said berm shall not encroach into the buffer zone. Berm slope shall not exceed a 3-to-1 ratio or exceed 30 feet in height. Immediately after construction, berm shall be planted with pine seedlings or other species approved by Meriwether County. Seedlings will be spaced 6 feet on center in offset rows. Owner operator shall maintain planting of the berms until permanent vegetation is established. If vegetation becomes substantially impaired during the continuation of mining operations, owner operator shall take reasonable steps to replenish or reestablish the vegetation. Owner operator shall provide the county with a reclamation plan and mining permit as approved by Georgia EPD. During the continuation of the mining operation, the owner operator or a contractor engaged by the owner operator shall perform street sweeping service on a regular basis at the intersection of Access Drive to State Route 85 and State Route 362, as necessary to keep said intersection free of dust, debris, stone, rock, or other similar items emanating from owners' operators' mining operations. Owner operator shall construct at their sole expense and in accordance with Georgia Department of Transportation specifications, turn lanes, acceleration lanes, and deceleration lanes on State Route 85 and State Route 362 at access entrances to the quarry. Said improvement shall be completed prior to removal of mined materials to provide additional safety measures for the traveling public. Owner operator shall make any Georgia Department of Transportation recommended improvements to the intersections of State Route 362 and State Route 85 prior to any transport of mined material from the quarry. Owner operation shall pay 50% of any future signalization of State Route 85 and State Route 362 when warranted by Georgia Department of Transportation to safely manage traffic at the intersection. Prior to start of operation on the track south of 362, the mining operation on the track north of 362 must be closed and the reclamation process underway prior to starting the mining operation on South Track. Owner operator must comply with all local, state, and federal regulations regarding stream and wetland protection buffers. Should the owner and/or operator of the quarry decide to lease, sell, or in any way convey their interest to another property for continued operation and/or reclamation of the property, owner operator must notify Meriwether County Board of Commissioners and Meriwether County Planning and Zoning Department at least 90 days in advance. A copy of all obligations and conditions of zoning shall be included in any lease or conveyance of title to another property. To ensure that residents in the vicinity of the mining operation have a continued supply of potable water, owner-operator must develop a plan approved by Meriwether County and the Meriwether County Water and Sewage Authority to provide an immediate secondary water source to all residents within 1 mile of the quarry operation. This secondary source must be available for immediate connection prior to start of mining in the event that nearby property owners experience failure in supply, water quality, or other issues with their well. The secondary water source must be completed prior to the start of any mining operations. Owner-operator must install fencing a minimum of 6 feet tall around the entire perimeter of the property, including along existing county and state right-of-way. Said fence shall be designed and constructed in a manner to deter persons from accessing the pit and quarry areas must be approved by Meriwether County. Owner-operator shall provide an appropriate bond to the state of Georgia in an amount to ensure adequate funding is available for site reclamation. This bond shall remain in full force and effect at all times until reclamation of the lands are complete and the closure approved by Georgia Environmental Protection Division. Meriwether County shall be provided with copies of the bond annually upon renewal of the business license. Owner-operator must obtain all necessary local, state, and federal permits to ensure issues concerning erosion and sedimentation control, dust, air quality, wetland protection, blasting, noise, and traffic associated with construction and continuing operation of the quarry are addressed. Owner-operator shall supply a copy of all noise monitoring and blast reports to Meriwether County on a monthly basis to assure compliance with all local, state, and federal regulations. Monitoring of noise and blasting shall be recorded by instrumentation located at strategic sites at the property lines and agreed upon by Meriwether County. All trucks used for transport of material from the quarry shall use designated state routes and roadways. County roads shall not be used for transport except for local delivery. During the continuation of the owner-operated mining operations, the owner-operator shall take responsible steps to spray and rinse commercial trucks transporting mine material from the quarry before said trucks leave the quarry premises and enter State Route 85 or State Route 362 in an effort to prevent the emission of dust, dirt, and debris from said trucks. Owner-operator agreed that if property is rezoned and the special use permit is approved, the property shall only be developed in accordance with the proposed plan submitted with this application. Failure to start construction on the quarry within 12 months, or if an application is made for any local, state, or federal conservation grant, easement, or program, the zoning and special use will become null and void, and zoning will revert to low-density residential. That concludes my report, and I appreciate you indulging while I read all that, but I felt like it was important that you hear everything that was in the report. And so now, we will now, the Planning Commission will now have an opportunity to hear from anybody in the audience. Not anybody, but the Planning Commission has decided to grant a 30 minutes of question presentation by each side. That includes, not everybody can speak. You need to pick a speaker for your 30 minutes. I suppose if each side wants more time, the Planning Commission can approve that by unanimous vote of the Planning Commission. But in talking to the Planning Commission before we started, they are in agreement with giving each side 30 minutes to respond. And so when you respond, I ask that you come to the podium, give your name and address, and we now will give the applicant opportunity now to respond.
Can you use the microphone, please?
I just want to ask that they be allowed to come up first and go ahead and speak. They're in favor. This is 30 minutes for people in favor. We just don't want them to be left out. That's all.
And so they'll still have to provide the,
They can be part of our 30 minutes. We just want to be sure they're not left out. Reasonable request.
as you use 30 minutes between you.
So that everybody can hear, I simply asked that there are a couple of other people in addition to Mr. Fitzgerald and myself who want to speak in favor of the request. And I just wanted to get them up here first so that if we run out of our 30 minutes, they're not precluded. That's all.
That's fine.
I know Ms. Fryer wanted to speak and Ms. Ledbetter. So let me move.
Okay, we're gonna start the time now, and I have now 8:53. I'm sorry, 7:53. I read too much, talked too much. Okay, I've got the time. What time you got? Okay. Okay, we're gonna use a timer once you start speaking. And it'll be 30 minutes allowed per side.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. I will relinquish most of my time. I will just say that on behalf of the Meriwether County Industrial Development Authority, we support the use of this quarry in the area that we're looking at. We support the jobs and investment that it will bring. And I will turn it over to Mrs. Ledbetter.
Did we get your name and where you lived at? There you go. I always want to make sure that people that's talking forward lived in this county. Thank you.
I work for Meriwether County.
Okay, she forgot to list her name and address, but she'll do that now.
My name is Jane Fryer. I'm Executive Director of the Meriwether County Industrial Development Authority. And no, I do not live in Meriwether County, but I work here.
We need order. Several times that we need order, please. In public hearings prior to this one, I have to say the crowd has been very civil, so we would expect you to be the same civility and respect of all the speakers. Thank you.
Evening. Thank y'all's time for listening to all that's being brought up in front of you. I'm Carolyn Ledbetter, and I'm from Woodbury, Georgia, in Meriwether County. On behalf of me and my husband, we are fully supportive of moving our county forward. If we do nothing, our cities and our county will suffer. We don't want that. We want to grow and thrive. We want to ensure that we foster growth in our county, and that we are looking into the future to meet our needs, to fund our education, infrastructure, and projects that will ensure our community does not go the way too many cities and counties in our state have gone. We fully support the granite quarry and the jobs and the opportunities it will bring. Thank you for your time.
I'm Jerry Fitzgerald, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm a quarry developer. I appreciate your time and attention. We've been working on this project now a little over a year. Our application for our project is in that binder there that Mr. Garrett has. We furnished 7 of those to the county for commissioner review, and I'm saying your review also. So my first question is, planning board member, have you had a chance to review that 500+ application and the substantiating information that are in there?
Yes.
So what I'd like to do, instead of here pitching this thing, whatever, if you have reviewed it, would you please share with me any questions you have? But what I'm asking is, planning board members, have you had a chance to look at this and review for your own information the in-depth study and justification for the project?
Yes.
Okay, do you have any questions at all?
My biggest concern would be whether there would be damage to wells in and around the surrounding area.
So what you're saying, the well situation is very important to you?
Well, yes, I live in a town that has 2 wells that supplies the water for about 150 people.
Based on the presentation submitted there with Mr. Garrett, we also established a public website. Are you familiar with our website? Have you been on and looked at our website? If you look at our website, there's a tab there that has 9 frequently asked questions. That subject is very well discussed. As a matter of fact, it's frequently asked question number 1. Will my well go dry as a result of the court? The answer is not likely. Here's, all right, how about this? No, it won't. Now, the answer is, could I get some help here?
Y'all, ask y'all to just be quiet till each speaker finishes. Because you're gonna have your side, you're gonna have your time also. So just give the applicant respect to present his case.
It all has to do with the geology between a limestone operation and a granite operation. Limestone is generally over the aquifer, and that's where the problems are. If you're familiar with our frequently asked question, it would explain to you that the Georgia EPD has totally different standards for a limestone application as opposed to a granite application, and has all to do with the core. All has to do with the geology. The governmental agency requires a hydrologic study to justify the fact that there will be no dewatering in a limestone operation. That's why limestone is rare. We don't even consider limestone operations because of the geology. Now, that does not pertain to granite. And it's explained in frequently asked question number 1. I'm not going to eat up my time here, but if you spend time and look at our website and our application, you would see that based on operations of hundreds of quarries in the southeast, that problem does not exist in a granite operation. Any other questions?
Also, a question, I did look at your website and I could not get the proposal to download, so I did not get to read it because I couldn't find it when I looked there.
Did you look at the frequently asked questions?
I couldn't get any of it to come up.
Okay, you couldn't. All right. I punched it up and had a number of people bring it up, and it always come up. So I just don't know what your problem could be. However, the explanation's in that 500-page application there that Mr. Garrett had. So the explanation is in there. Okay, any other questions? On the online website, if you've just done 2 things, look at the frequently asked questions and look at the maps. Everything that's in that study is substantiated by experts. It's substantiated by very in-depth studies, by very qualified people. This is not a project, we just didn't come to Alberton, North Carolina, pull this out of our hip pocket and say, oh, this is a nice place for a park. We didn't do that. I'm going to ask the law man to help me here. We got plenty of law here. Can you all help me, please?
Please be quiet and let Mr. Fitzgerald speak.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett.
Everybody, please be respectful of each other.
Now, based on the information in the application, and I'm going to cut this short because Mr. Norman here has got things to say. Based on Mr. Garrett's assessment of the site, his assessment does not sound like the site that we have put in for application. Just doesn't sound like the same site to me. And it's justified, and we have the justification and substantiation in that study and on a website that we spend considerable time and effort to answer questions just like this. There are 9. When these people get up to oppose, we've already heard all the opposition. We know what they're going to say. And every one of those, what they're going to say tonight, I'm going to say most, let's just say most, are answered in that website with the frequently asked questions. And they're answered justifiably by factual substantiation. There is no fabrication in it at all. want to cede my time to Mr. Norman, if nobody else up there has any question about the presentation, about the application, or about the information that's in the public website. Thank you for your time.
Members of the commission, Madam Chairwoman, I'm Bob Norman, as you know, I represent the applicant. We've been dealing with this for some time now, as you know, and we know it's controversial, but we know y'all want to deal with that many controversial zoning requests in Meriwether County. We appreciate your consideration of this. I think I've appeared before two of you, Mr. Chapman and the Chairwoman before, and dealt with Meriwether Park and the industrial development of Meriwether Park. For everybody here, if you haven't seen the map, that purple area in the very northwest corner of the county is Meriwether Park. There are 100 acres left in Meriwether Park, and that's the only industrial development area left in the county. All these other, all the purple, are the industrial areas in the county. Those are existing industrial areas. All that light green is rural development. What that means is, if this map is going to be used by this commission or by the county commissioners to make zoning decisions about the future that affect the future of this county, you're not going to have commercial development. You're not going to have industrial development of any kind, because rural development, according to the conclusions of Mr. Garrett, don't allow either. So this county, instead of growing, instead of being action,
You're already blocking your microphone.
I'm so sorry. Instead of being action for Meriwether County, it's going to be stagnation for Meriwether County. That is not the purpose of the chapter area map. It is not a future land use map. It is not a zoning map. It is not, planning is not zoning. That's Georgia law. It's fundamental Georgia law. Planning is not zoning. Planning does not have the legal effect of determining zoning of properties. Now, again, I know this is controversial. I'm going to start out by borrowing a statement, a quote from one of the senators last week. It is when emotions are high that fairness and the facts are most in jeopardy. It's when emotions are high that fairness and the facts are most in jeopardy. Facts are stubborn things, even when large numbers of people attempt to deny them. And it's not my attempt to take aim at the county residents here tonight, but merely to focus the members of this commission on the facts and not on the emotions and allegations that are unsubstantiated. The facts are not in the opposition social media postings, they're not on the opposition website. The facts are contained in the 500 pages of a zoning application that includes 8 professional expert studies that addresses every one of those criteria that Mr. Garrett recited, and he did mention one of those studies in his report. It's an extensive, he described it as an extensive. We offered to provide any other information, and it was never asked for. Not one bit of information was requested to address the questions that were raised. The facts are contained in that zoning application. The facts surrounding the subject property are located, and the facts of the subject property, located at the intersection of 2 state highways in Georgia, in Meriwether County. Highway 85 and 62 that are primary highway corridors ending through this county. If there's not going to be future development along those primary highway corridors, where is it going to be? You have a railroad running through the eastern part of the county in this area, runs right through the middle of the property, which is one of the advantages of this property I'll get to in a minute. You have these highways running through the eastern part of the county. There's a major north-south highway, 85, in the county, aside from one other. Where is the development going to occur? If you're going to use, if the county's going to use this character area map to make zoning decisions like Mr. Garrett's recommending tonight, then you're not going to have commercial development. You're not going to have industrial development. You got 100 acres left in Meriwether Park, and you're going to have to give the land away and give all sorts of incentives to get industry to come use it. And it's going to be tied to the Kia plant and nothing else. Now, the opposition is based on unsubstantiated, generalized fears, emotions, inaccurate information, and scare tactics spread on social media, not on the facts of the project. not on the, they're not basing the contentions, and in all due respect to Mr. Garrett, he's not basing his findings on the real facts concerning granite quarries like the one being proposed here. Not on the facts which the opposition contentions almost completely ignore, that all aspects of granite quarries are heavily regulated under multiple state laws, regulations, permits that are issued and enforced by state regulatory agencies, as well as federal regulatory agencies like OSHA. The opposition is also not based on the view of what will most benefit the future of Meriwether County, as I said, but is promoting stagnation in Meriwether County. The opposition, and with all due respect, Mr. Garrett's conclusions in his report that he read tonight are not based on the facts and realities surrounding modern granite quarries and the technology, best management practices, and regulations which are required to follow in order to be followed in order to operate a granite quarry. There are operating granite quarries in 7 of the 9 counties in the Three Rivers RDC. There are operating granite quarries across the fault line, north of the fault line, over to Hancock County, and further. In Coweta County, with an operating quarry in close proximity to a high-end residential subdivision. In Fulton and Cobb counties, there's a granite quarry neighboring airports, including Hartsfield, Jackson area. Yet we have not seen any news articles, or seen any TV coverage, or seen any reports at all about problems being created by those granite quarries of the same type of quarry that's being proposed here. None of those counties in the RDC which had operating granite quarries responded to this project during the development of regional impact review process that already occurred. To say that the granite quarries in their counties caused any problems to those counties or their residents, and yet the conclusion tonight of Mr. Garrett's recommendation and report is they're going to have all kinds of terrible consequences to residents in that area and to Meriwether County. Well, you haven't heard that about any other granite quarry anywhere. And I submit you to call EPD or whoever you want to and ask them about granite quarries and are these valid concerns as opposed to inaccurate misinformation. If you have read the information on the applicant's website or even the responses to the questions or the letter of intent, I don't know if you have the letter of intent, which addresses all of this, addresses all these studies in here and the conclusions in those studies. And you already know that the property contains a significant valuable deposit of granite stone and granite gneiss material. You know it's been used only for years and years to grow trees. That's all it's good for, and it's not even particularly good for that. The only other use is allowed in low-density residential. All that green area on the character area map, rural development, low-density residential, you can have grazing, you can have rural residential uses, you can have pasture. And even forestry, if it's commercial, it requires a special use approval. It is not, 90% of the county is rural development, it's zoned LDR. And you won't allow development if you keep it that way, if you use that fact to deny this project. If you know the facts, you know that there's a CSX railroad main line that runs through the entire property. You can see that on their conceptual site plan and the rest of the development plan for the project. That railroad connects Atlanta to Waycross and South Georgia and beyond. It's referenced in the county's plan that it has an average of 10 to 15 trains run up and down that main line every single day. Those trains create more noise in that area of the county than this quarry will ever create. There's a professional noise study, one of the studies in the report that concludes that the noises from within the interior of the facility will not exceed acceptable noise levels anywhere outside of the facility. And one of the reasons, if I may, one of the reasons that is a fact, a true fact, is this development plan, you have 100-foot natural buffers all grown up trees. You have seldom will anybody hear them. And the noise won't be any louder than the railroad running right through the middle of this area. You know that the property is 778 acres in size and is situated at the intersection of these two state highways. Only 187 acres of total property will be used under the development plan for mining and processing activities. The rest will be buffers, berms, overburden piles, which will also serve to block any visual or noise. These light green areas here, the overburden has to be removed, stored on the site, is returned later to the area for reclamation of the mining area. Land site here, next to the railroad, is protected by 100-foot buffer, 20-foot planted berm. Again, if you look at the line of sight, if you don't have that, you'll see, nobody's gonna see it. Everything's underground, everything's on the surface. Let it go up, it's on the surface or under the ground. All of this is highly regulated. That's not mentioned in Mr. Garrett's report that he just read. It's very highly regulated. You gotta have a surface mining permit from the state, air quality permit from the state, stormwater permit for processed water for the sediment. If sediment gets in processed water, it goes in the sediment pond, which you see here. Sediment settles. That's the only constituent of concern. The sediment is picked up in rainwater or processed water, and it goes into sediment ponds, and the sediment is removed, and anything that's discharged is clean water. And it's all got to be under a permit and regulations of the state. Nowhere in the report is all this regulation mentioned. And yet, previously, and I'm not attacking Mr. Garrett. I have respect that I've known Mr. Garrett a long time. But his report essentially regurgitates and adopts exactly what the opposition attorney has put in communications to the county. Might as well have written the report himself. And the conditions in the report, some of which are tremendously unreasonable. Let me read, this is a quote. This is a quote in the previous document about the state and federal rules. Because of the very strict rules and regulations of the state and federal government for permitting and quarry, the protection of the public health, safety, and general welfare will not be diminished. That's a statement, earlier statement by Mr. Garrett, before we started receiving communications from the opposition attorney, Mr. Stack, who I also have respect for. We've worked together before. Also, just while I'm quoting, this is another quote. It's contrary to what's in that report that you heard. The purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan is to reduce high unemployment rates compared to the state average, reduce a significant portion of the tax burden on residential property owners, take advantage of the large amount of undeveloped land in the county, diversify types of land uses to sustain tax base, and promote growth of new industries. Now, that's a statement by Mr. Garrett about the comprehensive plan. I didn't hear that anywhere in that report. What I heard in that report is the opposite of all those objectives of the comprehensive plan. If this character area of the map and the plan is followed, then none of those objectives are going to be achieved. It's going to stagnate the county because you can't grant zoning for any commercial development or industrial development, whether it be a quarry or anything else, because there's no place allowed in the character map for it, other than 100 acres in Meriwether Park that you got to give away to get an industry. It's been alleged by the opposition that if you allow this quarry, then you're going to be inundated with mining applications. Well, that's absurd. This is the main area of the county that has granite deposits. There are very significant granite deposits on this property. We've shown that in our application through a professional geologist in borings. He's got 43 years of experience. And yet Mr. Garrett, with all due respect, wants to become a geologist and say that's not enough information to determine that there's valuable granite deposits under this property. He wants to be a geologist. He wants to be an archaeologist and say, well, there could be archaeological or cultural sites on this property. Well, we've got a letter in the record from the forester who knows every foot of this property. Says he's never seen anything or heard anything like that about this property. I'm not gonna spend all night challenging the report, but I want to give you those and a few other examples of why I think, with all due respect to the staff, that report, I don't know how much the intro was on it, but with all due respect to the staff, that report ignores a lot of the facts in the record, ignores their 8 professional studies from experienced consultants, environmental, geological, land use appraisers, MAI appraisers. That report replaces the conclusions of those professional studies of experienced land use, traffic, land value, and geological mining experts with either Mr. Garrett's view or the view of the opposition attorney that has been adopted in that report. It ignores all these permitting regulations I mentioned. I don't want to get into the law a lot, but it is rather important to consider what the law is applicable to these kind of zoning applications. With respect to the land use plan, the ordinance itself states that the plan does not alter or affect existing zoning districts and does not effectuate an amendment to the official zoning maps. Under Georgia law, this is the Georgia Supreme Court, under Georgia law, comprehensive plans are planning tools only that do not have the force and effect of law to determine or regulate uses of property. But that's exactly how this character area map and comprehensive plan are being used in this case to recommend denial of this property. The law requires that this commission and the county commissioners, when they make a final decision, consider the detriment to this property on these property owners from the denial of rezoning that would require them to use property forever, limit its use, to have valuable granite deposits. It would be a perfect location from the standpoint of transportation, buffers, a big property under one ownership. It's a unique property. It's a unique opportunity for this county. And this county, if you recommend denial and the county commission follow that, is going to miss that opportunity. The law requires that this commission and the county commission give fair consideration to the detriment to the property owners if you were to deny rezoning and make this property be used only for timber growing for the rest of the duration. And you got to compare that detriment to the public interest factors and whether or not the facts, not the allegations and the fears, whether the facts show that that detriment is substantially outweighed by the interest of the public. And we contend, we've proven in these studies, I know you don't have them all, you haven't read them all, but these studies show that the kind of concerns that are alleged are not going to happen. This quarry can be developed and operated in accordance with state laws and permit without adverse impact to surrounding properties, their uses, their land values, or otherwise. And I see my time's up, so I'm going to stick to 30 minutes and let them request we recommend the grant of this request. And I'm happy to answer questions.
Okay, I have 2 questions. All right, you say there's no archaeology sites there. There's a 200-acre site on the property that was pre-Indian property many years ago. But also, behind the present fire station in Alberton, there is a burial site. And Stan Cartwright, we still have an Indian
You have the Hartsfield Airport, the biggest airport in the world, runways, all kinds of equipment, and I don't know about X-ray machines, I really don't, but all the equipment at Hartsfield Airport, with the quarry right next to it, you can't be bothered by blasting or dust or the kind of problems that are alleged will happen with this quarry. It will operate the airport if they were, they'd shut it down, obviously. EPD would shut it down. The first question about archaeological, if I may answer that real quick, if those sites exist, they have to be evaluated during the permitting process, the state permitting process and the federal permitting process. They bring in the state SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office, they bring in, if there's believed to be significant sites that would require either listing or more likely mitigation, and I've done this many times in wetland areas near rivers. Typically, they're located near the river bank. We're not anywhere close to 1,000 feet from the creek there. They'll be located on the high ground next to rivers. But if there are significant sites, they'll all be evaluated in the permit process. They'll have to be mitigated. If they're significant, typically they're not. But they would be mitigated and required to be by the federal folks if they were significant. We were going by the forester. We had no knowledge of that. But if they're there, they have to be addressed. Any other questions?
Okay, now the other side can make your presentation.
Good evening. Shirley Nash and the other commissioners. Appreciate your time. Mr. Norman says he and I go a long way back. I appreciate his observations about apparently how influential I am in the county. I wish I knew that, and I wish I had that kind of impact. I can assure you that discussions I've had with Mr. Garrett, Mr. Gay have not led me to believe that I've had any influence whatsoever on their behavior and their thoughts and their responses. So I appreciate that Bob thinks I've got that much influence. 30 minutes is a tough time to try to address this, but let me start as a starting point. Don Stapp, 260 Peachtree Street, Atlanta. I'm here on behalf of probably at least 250, 300 people. We put up for you, it's a dated map. In other words, by that, there are more folks now who have asked us to act on their behalf. But you can see this map that we demonstrate here, and all the folks in yellow are private property owners in the area. We also are acting here on behalf of the Citizens for Action for Meriwether, Inc., which is a 501c3 corporation representing more than 250 households in and near Alberton or in the rest of the county who are concerned about development and progress in the county. So that, and Ms. Ledbetter, who spoke on behalf, we actually have the same goals. We're looking into the future. We want jobs, we want opportunities, we want growth, we want smart growth. We don't want this quarry and the plans and proposals for it to detract and distract from the goals of the county. I think it's interesting Mr. Norman is complaining apparently about the plans, the comprehensive plans that set forth a long-term idea for what the county should be and how it wants to grow and how it wants to develop. That's the whole point of a comprehensive plan, is to sit there and not make you subject to the whims and the political pressures of an immediate time period, but to look in terms of the long-term impacts, to look and say, how do we want our county to grow? How do we want it to develop? How do we want to balance those competing needs of industrial, commercial, residential, and the other uses for a county? And that's what people prior to you have done spent a lot of time, a lot of taxpayer money to do, and yet I believe that the applicant would have you say, well, you're supposed to just ignore that. No, I think it's very clear that you're supposed to pay great deference and give credence to that. We've agreed with Mr. Norman that this is an emotional opportunity, an emotional situation, and I agree with him also that facts should take precedence here. And so accordingly, rather than simply relying on representations made by the applicant with no basis whatsoever, and that really don't withstand close scrutiny, we went to the time, trouble, and expense, and considerable expense, to hire a variety of experts to evaluate the proposal or the application made. I think it's interesting. In 30+ years of doing this, I've never had an applicant come up here and show such disrespect for the citizens of the community and the board, which is considering his application. They're trying to put you on the spot, trying to make it look like you haven't done your job, that somehow he has the right to be asking you questions rather than you asking him questions, and then trying to denigrate you because you've expressed concerns about that. He's made it abundantly clear. He sued the county once. He was trying to set you up. But I will tell you that Mr. Garrett and his staff, Mr. Gay, the county, they've done the proper analysis. Have they, in fact, gone far enough? Sometimes I've said no. I told them, no, I think you need to go farther. And that's why we hired experts to actually evaluate the plan and the proposal that they've done. So the report by Mr. Garrett and his staff goes through the standards, so I'm not going to repeat all of those. But I want to keep one important point in mind here. Zoning is not meant, it is legally not required to maximize his profit. It is not meant to maximize an applicant's profit. Okay? It is meant to evaluate whether there's a currently existing use that's appropriate, that has a beneficial use, and is consistent with the community. This site meets those criteria already. Your job, and that of the Board of Commissioners, is to evaluate whether or not an application is in the best interest of the county, to evaluate in terms of the health, safety, and welfare of the entire county, not simply the applicant. So keep that in mind as we kind of go through with the analysis that Mr. Garrett proposed or put forth and our evaluation of this application. Okay? The very first one says 16.8-1. The Planning Commission and County Commission shall consider the following matter. The very first one, sub A, is the existing land uses and zoning classifications in nearby property. Okay? The existing land use is all low-density residents. There are more than 100 residents within 3/4 of a mile of the proposed quarry pits. 100 residents that you're supposed to just pretend have no say in this matter, who you're supposed to say, well, because this applicant wants to do what he wants to do to maximize his dollars, you're supposed to just say, the heck with them. No. The second requirement is to evaluate the suitability of the subject property for the zone purposes. The applicant, not this community, in fact, not even the staff, nor you as board, have the obligation to demonstrate that suitability. It's not your burden of proof. You always hear about the burden of proof. It's not your burden. It's not Mr. Garrett's burden to prove that. Okay? It's the applicant's burden to prove that. And he hasn't done that. Why? Well, we went and we did. We hired geologists. We hired an appraiser. We hired a noise expert. We've hired biologists to evaluate that. We have all the reports at the current time? No, because they've been working on this for a year. Great. I've had a month to work on this. I don't have all the written reports. I can tell you summaries. I'd be happy to share those with you of what they have to say. The very first one talks about economic value. Okay? The appraiser. Okay? Our appraiser, who's got 30+ years into this, says that the report by the applicant's appraiser, quote, does not adequately or reliably provide a meaningful estimate of the sales or sales taxes which may result from rezoning and permitting property for aggregate quarry, unquote. In other words, there's not enough information in that application for them to make the conclusions that they make. They simply say this, but you want to know facts? Where's the facts for that? Anybody can conclude whatever they want. You can say, well, the earth is flat, and some NBA players have said that. Okay? But the facts are, no, the earth is round. The facts are that appraisal is an embarrassment to professional appraisers. He relies on assumptions and information that's not even accurate. Like I said, we're in the process of providing that in greater detail, but I can give you one example. For example, he sits there and talks about current uses of other properties, and you can go on to see what those current uses are. He measures, for example, distance from existing quarries and other facilities, doesn't even get those numbers right. And yet draws those conclusions and says, well, no impact. There's an old saying about garbage in, garbage out. Well, when the data is not right going in, conclusions obviously going to be wrong. So that's number one for the appraiser. Okay? Our geologist that we had evaluated that. Mr. Garrett's already referenced that. You cannot make a representation about the adequacy and sufficiency of a property of 700 acres, 187 acres for the core site, based upon 4 quarries, 4 boreholes. But that's what they did. And then they're telling you that, oh, because of that, it's worth $77 million. Nonsense. That's what it is. Our geologist, quote, the application does not contain sufficient information to reliably demonstrate that the proposed quarry operation will even be operationally feasible or economically viable to produce the asserted production levels, revenue streams, local jobs, or related tax revenues, unquote. Garbage in, garbage out. He also says it's not possible to know whether the $77 million valuation in the application is reliable or appropriate without disclosure and review of the applicant's net present value analysis, which was not provided to the county or to the applicant, to us. He also said the statements in the application regarding the overall quality of the reserve body, meaning the granite itself, based upon only 4 core samples, are speculative. And yet you're being asked to approve rezoning based upon speculation. The case law is very clear. You don't get to rezone based upon speculation. The geologist also says you cannot assess the quality of the underlying lithography for the rock without additional testing. They haven't done that. So you're supposed to take their assessment and say, well, that's a fact. Mr. Fitzgerald wants you to look at the 9 frequently asked questions. Well, you know what? We did that. We had our experts look at that, and they say none of those apply to this site. It's a general statement like saying everybody's in favor of mom and apple pie. Period. That's what it has no relevance and reference and suitability to this site. What else? Section C says that you're supposed to evaluate the property values of the subject property are diminished by particular zoning restrictions, okay? The property value that's currently zoned is not diminished in comparison to the other properties. In other words, again, remember what I said. They don't get to get their most money. The question is, does it have an economic value now? And their own appraiser, despite its limitations, their own appraiser says the property is currently zoned as $3,000 an acre. That's consistent with all the other properties in the area. So that, there's no economic devaluation of the property. Mr. Norman wants you to talk about the law. Fine, let's talk about the law. Georgia Supreme Court says unanimously quote, the fact that the property would be more valuable if rezoned borders on being irrelevant. Instead, the only relevant evidence regarding the value of the subject property is its value as it currently is zoned. Unquote. Mr. Norman, at Diversified Holdings LLP versus City of Suwanee, 302 Georgia 597. That's a 2017 case. So the analysis is what is its current value, not whether he can make more money based upon some speculative geologic analysis. Number D, or letter D, evaluate the extent that the destruction of property value subject promotes the health, safety, morals, and general welfare. The current LDR zoning does not destroy the value of the property for reasons I've already said. In fact, the current zoning supports the health, safety, morals, and general welfare for all the reasons that we've already said. Okay? Letter E, relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed upon the individual property owner. That's what you're supposed to evaluate. Okay? Well, there's no detriment, there's no hardship to an out-of-state developer who comes in, sits there, and gambles. That's what he's done. He's gambled on you approving his application. It doesn't have any facts under the threat of a lawsuit. Because let's be real clear, that's what he's doing here. He's sitting there saying, if you don't kowtow me, I am going to sue you yet again. Entirely inappropriate evaluation of the factors that you're supposed to be considering. He also says, for example, well, you're going to lose out on all this economic value. We've already talked about the value, but I think we've missed that better than someone else, maybe the industrial authority person who said, well, we want jobs. Okay? Our own expert says, contrary to his analysis, contrary to the applicant's analysis, that there'd be 30 jobs promised by the applicant. A well-run, properly trained production payroll will have less than 10 to 15 employees. So right there, you overstated by double what the economic benefit of payroll is. Okay? F, whether the property has a reasonable economic use is currently zoned. We've already talked about that. Okay. G talks about the context of the land development in the area. We've already talked about that, comprehensive plan. H, whether the proposed zone will be used as suitable in view of the use and development of adjacent property. In fact, I've already alluded to that. There are more than 100 residences in Alberton in the Carmel Historic District within 0.75 miles of the proposed quarry. Okay? I, 16.8-1I, whether it will adversely affect existing use or usability for the adjacent or nearby property. Our appraiser is already behind that applicant's, I've already told you that, the garbage in, garbage out. We talked about, there was an allusion or a reference to groundwater. Mr. Fitzgerald said, well, you don't have to worry about that, okay? All right. Quote, this is our geologist, the potential pervasive schist interlayers within the granite body at the quarry site has implications for groundwater flow in the region and must be taken into consideration during hydrologic investigations of the quarry site, unquote. In other words, means they haven't done the work yet. They're telling you everything's fine. He's giving you assurances that it's not going to affect the well. Absolutely no facts to base that on. Our geologist also says the applicant has failed to provide any quantitative downhole observations of groundwater conditions in the rock mass surrounding and beneath the quarry, unquote. What's all that mean? It means garbage in, garbage out. They have no basis for saying there's not being any groundwater impacts. You can make that statement all day long. Trained geologists look at that report and say, nonsense. Information just isn't there to make those claims. Surface water. A geologist looked at that too. Mr. Norman referenced the collection of storm water, okay? And said, well, don't worry about that because it's up to EPD to evaluate that. Wrong answer. How it's treated, even before it gets to the surface water collection up with the stormwater, has a direct impact upon the runoff to surface water streams in the area. So EPD doesn't address the water from the site until it gets to the collection area. But it can run all sorts of directions before it even gets to that. So there's absolutely no analysis, no discussion about how they're going to collect it, when they're going to collect it, sizing, and about that. I know Mr. Norman's going to say, well, don't worry about that, it comes later. No, I'm telling you that when they make assertions that it's not going to have any impact, you've got to ask what Mr. Garrett and Mr. Gay did, what's the basis for those broad representations? The information just isn't there. They glossed over noise, okay? So, well, noise is not a problem. Again, we hired a board-certified noise control engineer that's conducted noise studies on mining projects, including granite quarries that range literally from Alabama to Vermont. I mean, it's somebody who knows what they're doing. Says the applicant's noise study is not reliable and underestimates sound emissions by more than 20 decibels in several cases. And you don't have to be a noise engineer, though. The only fact I want you to take away from this is every increase of 10 decibels is the doubling of the noise. So when they underestimate the noise levels by 20 decibels, then they have either purposely or negligently told you, don't worry about it, there's not a problem here, when in reality, again, they cannot say that. When we had him model that and actually do the correct numbers, he said the proposed quarry will exceed the World Health Organization daytime noise guidelines, and when it's actually correct, it will also likely exceed EPA noise guideline levels. That's the real facts, that's the real information. Lastly, according to our geologist and noise expert, the application contains no analysis of the potential impacts from blasting. Quarry, rock quarry, no analysis of blasting. Reclamation, I don't know if it was Mr. Norman or Mr. Fitzgerald who referenced reclamation. The application contains no information or illustrations as to how the quarry operation will be reclaimed when the reserve within its limits are exhausted. In other words, after he's made his money and he walks away from the site, what happens to it? I know the answer. The answer is don't worry about it. The answer is EPD or some regulatory agency will address that. And who's left holding the bag? Meriwether County. Next criteria to evaluate is J. Whether the zoning proposal will result in use which will or could cause an excessive or burdensome use of existing streets, transportation facilities, utilities, or schools. Mr. Garrett already alluded to that. The applicant's own traffic study states the proposed quarry will cause at least a, quote, moderate increase, unquote, in heavy truck traffic along Highway 362. Mr. Garrett's already put the lie to that and why that's incorrect, and how that, again, underestimates, projects the actual impacts. K, standard K, whether the zoning proposal is in conformity with the policies and intent of the land use plan. Mr. Norman would have you basically say, planning is not zoning. Well, I agree with that. I agree that planning is not zoning. We all recognize you are a recommendation body, but the Board of Commissioners are going to be looking at what you say, what you do, and taking that to heart, because that's why you're there. You're to advise them and to say, we've evaluated this, and no, yes, we're trying to be tricked, and we're trying to be held out to dry by the applicant who wants to know whether we've actually looked at all 650 pages. Okay. You've done your job, you've evaluated it, you've done what needs to be done to ask the questions, to evaluate it, to rely on your staff, and just say, tell me about it. Tell me what you got here. The zoning proposal is not in conformity with the policy and intent of the land use plan. Mr. Norman keeps wanting to tell you, well, if you deny this, you're gonna be stuck and you only got 100 acres in the rest of the county. No, that's not the task. The task is to evaluate this proposal on its merits. This proposal should stand alone on whether or not it meets the plan and comprehensive land use plan. Okay? We submitted already a comment letter from State Representative Bob Trammell that talks about character areas in and around Alberton and the Carmel Historic District. Mr. Garrett's already alluded to this as rural development, unquote, in a crossroad community, unquote. Okay? You went to all this trouble planning for a reason. But he's going to just have you throw that out and say, well, it doesn't apply to us. Wrong. Okay? We've already talked about L, other existing and changing conditions. We haven't talked in great detail about the watersheds, but there is, in fact, the White Oak Creek is a high priority watershed, Beaver Creek and Winky Branch. Those all have significant resources. I absolutely agree, and that's why I was surprised that Mr. Garrett and Mr. Gay, that I appreciate the effort they went to evaluate this, because that's what we were trying to get them to do. Simply say, hey guys, here's the questions you need to be asking. My concern, and we concur with the recommendation for denial. What I am concerned about is then we evaluate the special uses permit. The clock is stopped. Where are we here? 24, thank you. All right, special uses. My concern about special use is that often it's tempting to say, well, we're going to deny the rezoning, we're going to give you a special use permit. Think about what a special use permit is. A special use permit basically says the zoning doesn't matter, it just flew out the window, and you're in effect granting them the very permission you said they couldn't have by the rezoning. So think about what that just did. You know, we were saying, well, ordinarily we say you shouldn't approve special, or you shouldn't approve the rezoning, but you know what? If you meet these conditions, then we'll say it's okay. I've been doing this 33 years, and I can tell you that I have never seen a zoning application that required 23 separate conditions to try to make it work. I mean, if this is the consummate, it's like telling your kids, I'm a parent, I've got 5 kids. It's like telling your kids, no. You make it real clear, no, you can't do that. And then you say, well, you know what? If you meet these 23 following conditions, then maybe I'll let you do it. Now, if you got to give your kid 23 conditions upon which they can do something, then the answer ought to be, you know what? They've got no business on earth doing it. So 23 conditions is, if you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole here. So do not fall victim or fall prey to that sort of bait and switch that says, well, we'll deny the rezoning, we'll give you a special use permit, because then all that does is it makes the county sit there having for in perpetuity to make sure that those conditions are met. And county the staff has the ability to go out and monitor every one of those conditions on a daily, weekly, monthly, or even yearly basis to make sure that those things have actually been met. The answer is no. So tell your kid no. It's okay to just say no occasionally, you know? I absolutely, like I said at the beginning, I absolutely believe that we should rely on facts. You should not be intimidated by an applicant trying to make you feel like you haven't done your job. It's not your job, it's the applicant's job to convince you with facts, with data, with evidence that their rezoning application is appropriate. And it's our contention, for all the reasons I've set forth, that it's not. I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
ordinance says the applicant has 5 minutes for rebuttal. May I have those 5 minutes?
No, the applicant does have the right to rebut.
And I want to take all of them, certainly not more than 5 minutes. We stand by everything in that application. It's performed by experts who state the facts, they seal the reports, they certify their conclusions. It's often said among us lawyers that what lawyers say are not facts, and I'm not trying to give you the facts. The facts are in that application. We stand by it. Mr. Stack stands up here and tells you what all these people are going to say or might say. I hadn't seen the first letter, the first document to support everything he says they will say at some point, apparently. But no support for that. We have met our obligation under the zoning ordinance to provide information, factual information that addresses all of the criteria. What Mr. Stacks wants you to do, and he did this before, Mr. Garrett will remember this in the previous commission hearing. He wants the county to take on the role of being a super regulator, take on the role of the Georgia EPD and the Office of State Fire and Safety Commissioner and the federal agencies and become a super regulator in a zoning process. That's not the purpose of zoning. The purpose of zoning is to look at the land uses. Is the current zoning detrimental to the property owner? And it is. The value of this property, typically rezonings, and y'all know this because you're here, typically rezonings are requested to increase the value of the property by allowing a more intensive use. For example, residential zone property, somebody wants to develop it for multi-residential or commercial. The value comes from the zoning. This is a different case in contrast. The value of this property comes, it's there. It's a natural deposit of valuable granite resource. And to suggest that a geologist with 43 years experience can't determine the quantity and quality of the underlying granite. He observed the borings, it's in his report, he observed the borings. He's got 43 years of experience evaluating granite resources. How they can say he's not qualified to give that opinion, I don't know. But this property is different. It's a unique property. And we've proven that it's a property that if you deny rezoning or you recommend it to the commissioner to deny, it's going to deprive the property owners of the minerals in this property. Mineral rights are legally protected rights in Georgia. You can't ignore that. And you can't ignore that the minerals exist on this property, and yet he's arguing this property should never be used for anything but growing trees. There's a lot of growing trees in Meriwether County. It's a great forestry county. And that's what's done all over the county. But there's got to be room for sites where there are existing granite deposits, the one site in the county where a quarry could exist and coexist with these residents. But he wants to encourage you to deny. When it gets to EPD, all these things will be evaluated. You can't ignore that. All this stuff has to be permitted. If EPD determines that the creek will be impacted, which we absolutely contend it will not, the groundwater wells could be impacted, the blasting is a problem, they won't grant the permit. But don't take it on yourself, or the commissioners take it on themselves to be a super regulator when you've got in these conditions. These are conditions, the kind of things that EPD imposes, and they regulate. You don't want to take it on the county staff to impose a lot of conditions on the zoning that are state conditions that the state regulators handle. So I submit, you need to pay attention to what's in the application. I know you don't have it, but you have a lot of the information, and everything that letter of intent you have that is supported by those studies by qualified consultants who certified to their opinions. Thank you very much.
I make a motion upon recommendation of the Director of Planning and Zoning's report that we deny the requested rezoning
meeting is adjourned.